Good evening and welcome to committee as a whole. Today is Monday, March 21st, 7:03. No, this meeting is also being conducted in hybrid meeting. We might remotely access to the meeting through the digital platform below. Roll call.
Councilor Stephanie Infante,
Present.
Councilor Selena Reyes,
Present.
Councilor Gregory Del Rosario,
Present.
Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez, Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez, thank you. Councilor Maria de la Cruz,
Present.
Councilor Ana Levy, Councilor Ana Levy, Councilor Pavel Payano, Councilor Pavel Payano, Councilor Stella Reyes,
Present.
Councilor Mark LaPlante,
Present.
So we have quorum. Pursuant to Chapter 22 of the Act of 2021, this meeting of committee as a whole is being conducted both in person and via remote participation. A reminder that the persons who would like to listen to view this meeting while in progress might either attend in person at the location above or use of any of the following access locations: Facebook Lawrence City Council page and YouTube City Council page. Please rise for a moment of silence. Thank you. Please join me to a legend. Thank you. Please be a little bit patient because we might gonna be having a technical difficulty with the people who are online. So please be a little bit patient. So the first item that we have in the agenda is document 6322. It's the Kennedy School of Government Preliminary Lawrence Vision for Economic Property, Caras Community Invest, Inc. And Councilor, can I get a motion to table document 6322? So moved. Second. Motion has been made, properly second. All those in favor? Roll call.
okay, roll call for document 6322 that was tabled. Councilor Del Rosario,
Yes.
Councilor Selena Reyes,
Yes.
Councilor Stephanie Infante,
Yes.
Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilor Maria de la Cruz,
Yes.
Councilor Ana Levy, noted. Councilor Pavel Payano, Councilor Pavel Payano, noted. Councilor Stella Reyes,
Yes.
Councilor Mark LaPlante,
Yes.
thank you.
The next document is 6422, Central Rivers Power Hydropower, FERC license comment. It has been put on the agenda by Councilor President Mark LaPlante.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I appreciate being recognized this evening. Through you, let me provide perhaps a pathway to get through tonight's meeting, if you will indulge me. I'll make some opening comments to start off this meeting. I then think it's important that we hear from CRP so they can talk to us about what it is that they're looking to achieve through this process. I would then recommend that we listen after that to the public and what the public will have to say and maybe a response or et cetera from what they hear from CRP. And then I would, at that point, perhaps allow us, counselors, if we have questions, at that point, we can ask the questions at the final spot. So with that, I want to thank you, Madam Chair, for this opportunity. So let me set the table here a little bit. The Essex Company is critical. They're the reason why this city exists. If it wasn't for the Essex Company, all of us right now would be sitting in the town known as the city known as the town of Methuen. And where I'm going to sleep tonight on the south side would actually be Andover, as opposed to Lawrence. But it's because of the Essex Company back in 1845, and because they saw the promise of the river and what that river could mean for business, for profit making, and for part of the Industrial Revolution, that they made a bit of a leap and took a gamble to go ahead and to put the pieces in place in 1845 to petition the legislature of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to sign and allow parcels on both sides of the river to be utilized for water power, and potentially a dam, and potentially at that point a canal, and potentially mill power in 1845. As a matter of fact, the anniversary of the signing of that took place yesterday in 1845, March 20th, is when the governor signed that ability to take place, and so it did. That very day, what I find fascinating was that there must have been a morning signing ceremony in Boston at Beacon Hill, because they jumped on a train, went to North Andover, took a carriage drive over, and I would presume it'd be on the south side, not the north side, because there were no bridges, really. Took a look at it, this is what we're doing, this is what we're getting, and that evening went to Lowell, to this place called the Merrimack House, where they say, according to a guy by the name of Tewksbury, I think it's Robert Tewksbury, who said that there were some libations, there were some meals, and then a guy named Lowell and a guy named Lawrence went to the back room to talk a little bit about how they can make that partnership a little more real. And then they did, and 2 days later, stock was being sold and purchased within that very small group, and they knew that they were going to start in 1840. They purchased the land and got this going, and then they started building, starting in 1845, starting the building of what we're starting to see here today. I say all that, and by the way, counselors, in 1847, this is when our town began. The town of Lawrence began in 1847. In 1852, as we all know, that's when we became the city of Lawrence in 1852. But the point here is that if it wasn't for the Essex Company, all that we see here today would not be in existence. This place would be completely different. The Essex Company is part of why the city of Lawrence exists. They have I want to say a responsibility, but there is language inside the laws that talk about responsibilities when this charter was passed. And the Essex Company has been a partner in our city, Madam Chair, for the longest time. Right across the street here, the Common. Common was a donation by the Essex Company. There were 4 churches in our city that the land was donated and the funding for the churches were given by the Essex Company. Union Park, now O'Connell Park, was donated. We went to Stockton Park the other day, donation by that. There are soup to nuts, their ability to bring train travel through here and their political muscle, they have been a part of it. So what are we doing here tonight? Why is this important this evening when we're talking about canals, Madam Chair? And the answer is simple. There is a relationship that is tied very tightly between this city of Lawrence, Massachusetts, and the Essex Company. And over the course of time, things have happened. Things have changed, whether, and a lot of the, perhaps ownership, and we know ownership has changed. But what hasn't changed is that all of us, whether you're an official for the Essex Company, you're standing on the shoulders of those who preceded you, all the way back to Saunders, all the way back to Lawrence, all the way back to Barker and Tewksbury, and the rest. There's one guy on the, two guys right on behind us that were part of the Essex Company, and there's a couple others upstairs who were mayors. That's how tied in we were with the Essex Company of the city. They were mayors of our city, and probably sat, not in this chamber because things have changed a little bit over time, but debated somewhere in this building in time. So I want to set the groundwork that as we start talking about the future, we understand a little bit about the past, and we understand that there is a connection between the responsibilities of the Essex Company to our water structure, to the power and what happened, and what are we doing in the future. And I would hope and I would expect that no matter which way this conversation goes this evening, that we have a fundamental appreciation for the fact that all of us, whether you're an official from the Essex Company today, or you're a city councilor today, we're all standing back on people who were making decisions and having a relationship that built our city, and we all are stewards of our city. We're just renting spots here. We're not going to be here forever, but maybe the city will stay here for quite a long time. So as I like to see things happen this evening, Madam Chair, is I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more about the conversation about what we're going to be, what it is that the Essex Company is looking to do. I'm also looking forward to hearing from the residents, maybe a reaction. And the ultimate goal here is that there is something called, I'm going to take a little bit of the thunder away about what we're here for, the MOA, Memorandum of Agreement, that talks about the canals, and the canals are currently part of the footprint of a license. And the license is given by this organization, this federal organization called FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And that license expires in 2028. And before we start the process, meaning we collectively, the royal we, start the process in 2023 of next year, what we're going to hear from our friends on CRP, Central Rivers Power, they're the owners of the Essex Company. We're going to hear that they're looking to move this away, and perhaps it's obsolete, these canals, and you can speak to that. If I'm misspeaking, you can say it in your own words. Through you, Madam Chair. And then hopefully we can get to and then ultimately what we're going to need is for residents, if you have a comment, clearly tonight's the place. But the real decision makers are not sitting here. The real decision makers are sitting probably in Washington, D.C., in FERC, and then we have somebody called the SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Officer out of the Secretary of State's office, who is a kind of a partner, a signatory to this, and we can go down those weeds a little bit too, because those are important, but those are the central players. With that, Madam Chair, I want to thank you for the time, and I look forward to hearing from the officials from CRP/Essex Company. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. LaPlante. My name is Skip
Address for the record.
My name is Skip Medford. I am the manager of stakeholder relations for Central Rivers Power, the parent company of the Essex Company in Lawrence. Thank you. You've done a fantastic job summarizing our relationship and the Essex Company's history in Lawrence. We remain a proud member of this community and have enjoyed that role certainly since 1845, but especially since 1979 when the FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission in Washington, authorized construction and operation of our modern hydropower facility on Broadway. It's known as the Lawrence Hydroelectric Project and sits at the south end of the Great Stone Dam. I'd love to talk history more, but we do own and operate many parcels and structural features throughout Lawrence related to the Essex Company through history and to water power generation, which was Essex Company's prime purpose. Its secondary, or not its sole purpose, the other purpose of the canals in Lawrence and besides power generation was navigation. And some of you may be aware of the history of the navigation through the North Canal, but it was meant to surmount the Essex Dam. All right, there's been a lot of commercial and community development through the years. We're happy to be part of that. We are presently part, and we hope to be a continued part of that. I do have some materials which may inform the council about the Lawrence Hydroelectric Project. May I distribute them? Like I mentioned, the Lawrence Hydroelectric Project was authorized in 1979. It was given a 50-year license, and as Mr. LaPlante noted, the license will expire in 2028. We will begin in 2023 a relicensing process. We have to apply to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to have that license reissued, and the public, certainly the City of Lawrence, and anybody else who wishes to participate in that very public process will be given an opportunity to weigh in. As noted, it's a 5-year process. It's very inclusive, but having some institutional familiarity with the process does help. You will see on the first summary sheet below the plant summary a mention of the MOA process. In 2019, the FERC, after their inspection of the Lawrence project, requested that Essex Company determine if the North and South Canals served any project purpose to the Lawrence Hydroelectric Project. And that project purpose is clearly defined in FERC regulation, 18 CFR section 4.41. It's cited in the materials I've provided you. But one of the prime inclusions that FERC makes is that the project boundary, what FERC supervises and requires that we supervise at the Lawrence project, must include only those lands necessary for the operation and maintenance of the project and for other project purposes. So, on page 2, you will see a diagram of the Lawrence Hydroelectric Project boundary. The boundary is an artificial overlay which describes an area which FERC requires us to supervise. Use, occupancy, public safety, recreation, and other things of community benefit. As I mentioned, FERC in 2019 asked us to determine whether the canals remained necessary for the project operation. Our conclusion was that they did not, for a number of reasons, which we'll be happy to illustrate. But in 2020, under FERC directive, we filed an amendment application with the FERC, which again supervises our entire project's operation, to request a removal of the North and South Canals, which Essex Company has owned and will continue to own. That's listed on the Canals MOA summary, page 2. we requested to remove them from the project boundary, i.e. remove them from under supervision of the FERC. The amendment process is a serious matter, and in this case, because of the historic nature of the canals, required that the FERC consult with the Massachusetts State Historic Preservation Officer of the Massachusetts Historical Commission. Their comments were considered, and in 2021, I'm summarizing a lot, the FERC directed us to engage in consultation in the local community to develop a memorandum of agreement, the MOA, to specify how and what measures would be taken regarding the canals if they were to be removed from the project license. In other words, removing the canals from the project boundary was a federal action affecting historic resources, and the FERC wanted and needed to ensure that those historic resources would be documented and monitored, protected, and that process is known as a Section 106 consultation. And we started that in the fall of 2021. SHPO, in their response to the FERC in late 2020, indicated that at a minimum we must consult in the development of our MOA with the City of Lawrence, the Lawrence Historical Commission, and Groundwork Lawrence. So we started that process in late 2021. And the Canals MOA summary, which you have in your hands, was distributed right before Christmas. And again, the MOA is intended to receive input, comments, and specify a process regarding how and what details to include, including schedules and other details, to protect historic resources, such as the canals and their features, should they be removed from the project boundary. We actively started meeting with stakeholders on January 11th, 2022. In addition to the three primary stakeholders that I mentioned recently, City of Lawrence, Lawrence Historical Commission, and Groundwork Lawrence, we welcomed other participants, other stakeholders who had not been directly invited by us, but we welcomed them to it happened to be remote meetings at the time, and we're happy to hear their comments. Each participant of many has provided, not each participant, many participants have provided comments, some in writing, some verbally, and they've all been good. They've been thoughtful, they've been well documented, and they've been cooperative and engaging. Some city councilors have provided comment. We also initially started with certain members of the planning department. Later on, other members of the planning department participated. The city attorney was invited. And our consultation, MOA development, proceeded every 2 weeks since January 11th and concluded a week or two ago. It concluded a week or two ago because the FERC has specified that our response on the MOA development, our submittal to them of a draft MOA about how to treat historic properties is due tomorrow. We need to file our response to the commission at that time. It's our intention to do so, and we've summarized comments in a table, and we've addressed each one and provided comments about each comment that we've received from the various stakeholders. And our filing is in preparation for tomorrow. We'll be filing that electronically with the FERC. It's a public document, and from that point, the FERC will take the draft MOA we've provided, comments from each and every participant who's wished to submit them in writing. The Lawrence Historical Commission has elected to have their comments included verbatim, and we're going to do that. And that package will be evaluated by the FERC, and as part of the amendment application that we filed in August of 2020, the FERC will open it up to public comment, at which time they'll receive more input from anybody who wishes. those comments can be made electronically or in writing. And at some point, you know, FERC will take the MOA, the application, our amendment, through their process and act on it as they deem fit. They have several courses of action. They can not accept it, they can approve it, they can seek more consultation and input, they can defer it. We're aware that we are quickly approaching our 5-year relicensing period, and the FERC may decide that this issue warrants deferment until that time. I can go on ad nauseum about the MOA, but you have some information. I'm sure the public is eager to speak as well. There are some clarifications that I could make, especially regarding your motion to appear and your invitation tonight. One, we regard, you know, tonight's appearance as not a last opportunity on the canal's boundary amendment inclusion and MOA development, but a step in many opportunities, both for treatment of the canals and for a continuing relationship with the City of Lawrence regarding the entire Lawrence project, which is much more extensive than just the North and South Canal. It includes the lower locks, gatehouses, carriage houses, the entire head pond of the Lawrence project upstream of the Essex Dam. And as you're probably aware, 4 or 5 municipalities, including the City of Lawrence, have their intakes upstream of the Essex Dam. It's a very important resource for adequate water supply for Lawrence, Andover, Methuen, and Tewksbury. We also provide, through the impoundment, recreation opportunities upstream, public safety features. As you're well aware, the Beshara Boathouse, a very successful operation, operates just 1 mile upstream of the Essex Dam, and we're happy to support their recreational opportunity for City of Lawrence residents as much as we can. And we coordinate with folks like the Water Department head, the Beshara Boathouse head, and the city engineer, and others on projects on a revolving basis throughout the year. We're involved in, due to the Essex Company holdings of many years, streets, signage, easements, sidewalks, and things like that. All vestiges of the Essex Company's history, which was very comprehensive, and trying to be good citizens today and continued valued members of the community for the future. So I want to emphasize that, you know, I don't regard this as a last opportunity. It's one step in the MOA process and a first step in, it's been a long time since we've met with the council, a first step in a continuing dialogue that we hope to have with you. And one other clarification from your initial submittal was the ownership. So our Canals Boundary Amendment application, at this time, it only proposes to remove the canals from FERC supervision. We would still be the owners of the canals. And ownership rights and responsibilities wouldn't change. They would be probably better clarified and specified under the MOA and subsequent historic preservation measures and documents. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, or open to your next steps.
Thank you. Councilor, I will encourage all of you just to write your question, and because I'm going to open the floor for any participant in the public that they wish to speak, and then at the end, we might gonna have, I'm sure, they will gonna have a lot of questions, but we're gonna keep the question for last. Is anyone in the public to wish to speak at this time?
Good evening. My name is Susan Grabsky, and I am the director of the Lawrence History Center, located in the former Essex Company headquarters at 6 Essex Street in Lawrence, in downtown Lawrence. Like the Great Stone Dam and North Canal, the Essex Company offices and yard is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. We take our role as stewards of the historic property very seriously. Even as a small not-for-profit, we've been able to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars towards its preservation because of its importance to the history of the city. Because of our efforts, there's no discernible difference between the way our buildings looked when they were built in 1883 and how they look today. In contrast, anyone standing on the banks of the North or South Canal would certainly not be able to come to this same conclusion. The Lawrence History Center has taken part in months of consultation with Central Rivers Power and Community Powers to develop an MOA that outlines steps to avoid, minimize, or mitigate potential adverse effects of removing the North and South Canals from the FERC project boundary. That consultation continues, but regrettably, even with federal oversight in place, for decades, a lack of corporate stewardship of the canals has caused them to fall into disrepair. Canal walls that were engineered to hold water have been drained nearly dry. This has caused degradation to the integrity of the wall structures, allowed for the growth of vegetation, and impacted the foundations and stability of structures along the canal, such that they have become a hazard running down the center of this community. On March 20th, 1845, the Essex Company was chartered to build the Great Stone Dam, carve the canals for the purpose of selling or leasing water power to an industry that was not yet here. Their own articles of incorporation state that the corporation shall forever maintain canals and locks as shall be necessary. That obligation has not been met, nor has the obligation to present-day owners who still hold rights to call water from the canal. Millions of dollars of cross-sector investments have been made in this community to improve the quality of life in the North Canal Historic District. Yet despite those efforts, city residents and its workforce look out their windows over a canal that is now a testament only to the legacy of disinvestment in the city of Lawrence. We are in a time when national dialogue is centered around mitigating the impacts of climate change, the reduction of the reliance on fossil fuels, both foreign and domestic, and the importance of learning from our history. Here in Massachusetts, we have one senator who's the author of the Green New Deal, another who felt this city was important enough to launch her presidential campaign from. I urge this body, along with federal, state, and local elected officials, not just to act to preserve the canals and Lawrence's industrial hydropower history, but also to take steps to ensure its future, to maintain its renewable energy footprint, and to oppose the removal of the canals from the FERC project boundary by sending a letter to the State Historic Preservation Officer requesting that she does not sign on to the proposed MOA. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Jessica Andors. I live at 3 Jackson Terrace in Lawrence, and I'm also the executive director of Lawrence Community Works. I am speaking before you as both a resident of the city and as the leader of an organization that owns several properties bordering the canals, which we have, as Susan alluded to, raised millions of dollars in mostly private and some public money to revitalize and bring back to life. For as long as I have been in this city, which is over 20 years now, I've been part of what I would call an epic struggle to save the canals from a legacy of corporate divestment. The canals are a defining part of the historic heritage of this city, and for the last 40-plus years, through Consolidated Hydro, NL, and other owners, we have seen a steady pattern of disinvestment in this important historic resource, as if the needs and history of this city didn't matter or could easily be dismissed. The current owner, CRP, has inherited this situation, granted, but they're also inheriting a legacy of distrust that this action does nothing to mitigate. I think a large question for all of us, or many of us who are in this room, is why remove the canals from the project boundary unless it is also to remove them from a defined structure of accountability? And what is going to be the mechanism for oversight and accountability for preservation and maintenance of this very important resource if they are removed? In addition, the existence of the canals is necessary for owners along the canals to exercise their historic water rights, also known as mill powers, most of which are currently leased back to the Essex Company, but that is not a permanent situation, and there is LRA and city ownership of properties along the north and south canals that could eventually generate green hydropower for this community if those canals are maintained as part of the project area. I think that we have participated in the MOA process and given comments on it, and we have also communicated to Central Rivers Power that we do not support the removal of the canals from the project area, and that at an absolute minimum, we need a concrete and set-in-stone commitment of resources for the preservation and maintenance of the canals and for accountability going forward to make sure that this important resource is preserved for the city. So I would echo Susan's plea to you all that the city send a letter to the State Historic Preservation Officer opposing this. I think it is a matter that is more properly taken up during the relicensing agreement, which is coming up and which provides much more extended and ample opportunity for public comment and input, and for us to collectively figure out a way that we can preserve and utilize this incredible historic resource that, as Council President LaPlante stated, is part of the founding history of this city. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Amita Kiley. I grew up in Lawrence, my family still lives here, and I work at the Lawrence History Center as collections manager and research coordinator. On behalf of everyone who loves and respects the city of Lawrence and its history, I am asking you to send a letter to the State Historic Preservation Officer requesting that she not sign on to this proposed MOA, which puts our historic heritage at risk. Lawrence's canals are a world-renowned engineering feat and are of the utmost important historic significance. The canals were built by the hands of Lawrence's earliest immigrants. For years, the canals powered the textile mills, which in turn offered opportunity to immigrants from all over the world who came to Lawrence in search of a better life. To allow the destruction of these historic canals through neglect and inaction is an injustice, not only to the Lawrence residents of today, but to our Lawrence ancestors who came before us. We've already lost so many historic structures in our city. We can't lose the canals too, not on our watch. Just imagine the opportunities that a magnificent, fully repaired canal full of water would bring to the city, especially with the ongoing revitalization of the historic North Canal District. The possibilities are endless. Please do not let the canals be removed from the project area. Thank you.
David Meehan, 79 Pearl Street, Lawrence, Massachusetts, but I'm also on the Lawrence Historic Commission. And Mr. Jonas Stunzer, our chairman, sends his regrets that he couldn't be here this evening as, oh there he is. Well, there's been a recent death in the family. And
Changed his mind at the last minute.
Yeah, yes, I see. As was stated before, the Historic Commission has been involved at the inception of this memorandum of agreement, and our comments come in the form of a letter, which I do believe that you folks do have in possession. If not, I have extra copies. But I did want to read that publicly for everybody here and for the folks at home. The Lawrence Historic Commission is deeply concerned with the proposed disengagement of the North and South Canals from the federal jurisdiction oversight, as stated in the Memorandum of Agreement among the Federal Energy Regulation Commission, the Massachusetts State Historic Preservation Officer, and the Essex Company regarding an amendment of license for the Lawrence Hydroelectric Project of Lawrence, Massachusetts. To disengage these areas would pose an adverse effect on the preservation of the North Canal Historic District as well as the South Canal. The structures of the North Canal Historic District include the Great Stone Dam, the Gatekeeper's House, Gatehouse, and the canals themselves, all of which have been placed on the National Register of Historic Places as representing an intact 19th century hydro-industrial unit, showcasing the finest engineering accomplishments of the hydro-driven power of their day. The dam, gates, and canals were designed as one unit, dependent upon the sum of its parts, and are under federal jurisdiction in ensuring and monitoring its ability to produce hydropower. The Essex Company, in its Acts of Incorporation of 1845, as mentioned earlier by Councilor Plant, Section 6 states, the said corporation, and this is verbatim, the said corporation shall erect and forever maintain such canals and locks as shall be necessary around the dam constructed by them. While the Essex Company has had a history of honoring its commitment to forever maintain the canals, specifically its walls, such has not been the case in the new millennium. Draining the canals, leaving the canal walls exposed for months on end, has allowed tree saplings and other vegetation to take root within the walls, undermining the masonry and greatly contributing to their decay. To no avail, the Lawrence Historic Commission has repeatedly brought this problem to the attention of the Essex Company to initiate a solution and make clear their commitment to, quote, forever maintain such canals and locks as written into their original Acts of Incorporation. In order to guarantee a steady and unobstructed flow of water from the gatehouse into the canal and freely exit the canal and return to the Merrimack River, the Essex Company, in its proposal to sell water power of 1845, Section 3 states, the grantors, Essex Company, are to construct and forever keep in good repair the principal canals, and from time to time, as occasion may require, they are to remove and clear out obstructions that may accumulate therein. This has been the practice of the Essex Company to routinely clear debris from the canal, but this practice has become lax over the recent decades. The debris not only impedes the flow of water, but also presents a health hazard for our citizens. The Lawrence Historical Commission has repeatedly brought the problem of debris accumulation in the canal to the attention of the Essex Company with little success. The lack of cooperation the Lawrence Historic Commission has experienced with the Essex Company in maintaining their property leaves us little faith in its ability to successfully execute the Historic Properties Management Plan as proposed in the Memorandum of Agreement. The HPMP, under stipulation Section 2C, states that the plan will include a minimum provisions for a treatment that will be implemented to maintain and preserve the North Canals while they are owned by the Essex Company. The HPMP is to be implemented within 6 months following the date of issuance of the license amendment. However, while this proposal is commendable, the maintenance and preservation should commence at present and not at some future date, undefined date. The visual assessment of the North Canal walls completed in May of 2019 by Woodward and Curran by the City of Lawrence clearly illustrates the need to address the situation of the compromised canal walls, with 17% of the walls in very bad condition, one-third of the walls in need of repair. The walls of the canal need immediate attention to arrest the present condition and prevent future decay. Additionally, a source of funding needs to be identified as recommended by the Massachusetts Historic Commission in their letter. The Essex Company Acts of Incorporation of 1845 again states, the said corporation shall make and maintain the dam so built by them across said river suitable and reasonable for fishways to be kept open at such seasons as are necessary and useful for the passage of fish. In tandem with the current fish ladder, which is constructed at the hydroelectric plant, The United States Department of Interior Fish and Wildlife Service recommends in their comments on the proposal license amendment that a study of flow and migratory fish passage may indicate that one, the canals provide effective means of downstream fish passage, and two, during high flow events that the canals may be used to increase the effectiveness of existing upstream passage facilities at the dam. The FWS recommends that the Essex Company wait for the results of such a study before proposing to remove the canals from the project boundary. The Lawrence Historic Commission is in agreement with the recommendations executed of such a study, and again realize the importance of proper maintenance and repair of the canal walls to provide passage for fish migration, as well as a source for future hydropower. To remove the canals from the project boundary and the jurisdiction of FERC would be adverse to the passage of wildlife and to future hydro possibilities, and that it will jeopardize its maintenance and cohesiveness as an intact 19th century industrial complex of hydroengineering. And incidentally, Lawrence is the last of the planned industrial mill complexes. Lowell was first, 1826, Manchester, New Hampshire, 1836, and then learning from the mistakes of the previous cities, they constructed the mills here in the canals in Lawrence, which are in perfect alignment, all parallel, the most effective of any mill city. The Essex Company that committed itself from its inception, the Essex Company has committed itself from its inception to forever maintain and keep in good repair the canals and locks constructed by the Essex Company. And that's what we're asking for this evening, ladies and gentlemen, that the history of Lawrence be regarded just as importantly as colonial histories in our neighboring towns of Andover, Lexington, and Concord. They may have started the American Revolution. We start the Industrial Revolution, which many people would make an argument that the progress here, the Industrial Revolution here, had a greater impact on forming the history of the United States, making it a gateway for immigrants throughout its history, as it still does today. And to lose that emblem would be losing a part of important American history. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, counselors. Hi. Mary Guerrero, 149 Abbott Street in Lawrence. I have to admit I've been very upset hearing the news that the canals might be separated from the dam, because I feel like they're already not being treated correctly and we're losing part of our history. But also I wanted to start with by saying that I'm a retired teacher here from Lawrence, and I was lucky enough to teach a class called Lawrence Then and Now. And I learned as much from the children looking around their city as they were supposed to learn from me. And one of the things one of the students told me was, my city is a museum. So he looked around, he thought, you know what, this is a museum, we should take care of it. And I started to think, when you go to a museum, you teach children, not to touch things, to preserve it, to keep it for the future. And here we are allowing a city that is a museum to just be lost right in front of our eyes. It's very, very upsetting. I was listening to what you were saying for CRP, and one thing caught my attention, or a couple of things. But it talked about how FERC says that, to not have the land that's not part of the project, right? Part of the project purpose. And I was thinking that yes, okay, so for your purpose, you don't need the canals. But where does that leave us if the canals are dependent on the river and on the dam for the water? And where does that leave us if the companies that have been running the canals have allowed the water to go so low that now they're damaged and unsafe? Why are we supposed to turn around and say, okay, we just get rid of the canals now that they're not safe, now that they've been trashed, now that they've been mistreated, now you want to just take them off of your land that your license. So I would like to ask you, our city, and then also the Historic Society for the state of Massachusetts and others not to sign on this MOA, because I think that it's going to hurt us. It's a slap in the face of the citizens of the city and for our history and our community. So thank you very much. Bye.
Councilors?
Madam Chair, would it be okay if I just give a welcome to a former gentleman who used to actually sit in the seats that we're sitting in right now and was part of the Charter Commission, I believe, and was on the first council in '86. I just want to give a welcome through you, Madam.
Thank you,
Chair.
Councilor President.
Mr. J. Dowd.
Welcome.
Welcome, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor.
Welcome.
Thank you, appreciate it. My picture's up there.
Picture is there?
That guy's got dark hair, though. That was a long time ago. No, he was in my classroom at Austin Prep. Good evening, councilors. My name is Jay Dowd. I live at 14 Saltonstall Road in North Andover. I am a trustee of the White Fund in Lawrence, Lawrence's oldest charitable trust. I am also a trustee of the Lawrence Public Library. So I'm here to speak to the leadership of the Central River and to you councilors who may be just getting a first run at this canal issue, but also in support of the fine group of speakers who have presented to you the fine detail already of the legal matters that they are all trying to interpret. It is impossible to overstate the importance of the falls and the canals to the identity of this city. Just for starters, they're the reason we're all here. A quick scan of the Boston Business Journal's Corporate Citizenship Awards in Massachusetts for 2021 include Biogen, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Bank of New York Mellon, and the Boston Bruins. That's just a few of the Bs. There are nearly 100 award winners altogether for 2021. I'm here because we are looking for the corporate citizen in you, Central River Power, to step up and lead. These canals are an economic development issue. I call your attention to the success of places close to home like Lowell and Providence, Rhode Island, and far away like San Antonio in Texas. All three built thriving business districts on the banks of their rebuilt canals. The canals are a business development issue. How many businesses exist already in the mill buildings once served by these waterways? Who can organize this disparate group into a force for sustained growth in our city? And the canals are a historic preservation issue, so beautifully illustrated by speakers already. New citizens are already moving into the apartments and the condominiums along the side. A clean, safe, and attractive environment will convince them to stay long-term and take the new jobs. But I must add that you won't be alone if you ask for help. Congressman Trahan can bring Lowell's vision. Former Mayor Dan Rivera can bring us the resources of mass development. And our Senator Elizabeth Warren, who announced her run for President of the United States on the banks of the North Canal, will, I believe, bring us anything we ask for. So there's much in this for you, too. As much as there was for the Essex Company, which you now own. Your corporate name and presence in this community will garner honor and respect, different from, but as important as your profits. So I challenge you guys. I challenge you to provide us with leadership on this canal issue and in the process qualify for listing among the Corporate Citizen Award winners in next year's Boston Business Journal. Thank you.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Tennis Lilly. I live at 40 Spruce Street in Lawrence. I am also chairman of the Lawrence Conservation Commission, a position I've had the privilege of holding for the past 21 years. I want to first echo all of the statements that have been made here this evening. I don't think I disagree with anything that anyone has said. I have to tell you that both as a member of this community and as a public official, I view the canals and the historic structures in this city with both a great sense of pride, since I've called myself a Laurentian for the past 35 years, but also with a certain amount of sadness and dismay. I want to state for the record that the Essex Company, whether they be owned by Enel or Central Rivers, has from time to time made repairs and improvements when necessary to do so to the canals. They have been responsive to the concerns of the Conservation Commission since we have regulatory oversight over the canals. While they're man-made, they are a water body. They are land underwater. They serve a number of purposes like flood control and wildlife habitat. So the commission has jurisdiction over them. But I don't want to repeat anything that anybody else has said. So I guess and by the way, I've known Skip for a long time. We have a very cordial relationship. I will say that while I sometimes felt that Enel as a corporation was at times hostile to the idea that the people in this city would have the temerity to speak up about how what they view as their dam and their canals were cared for, I certainly don't get that sort of impression from Central Rivers. But what I do feel that has been present since the new hydroelectric dam was installed, and since the assets of the Essex Company were changed hands, was one of indifference, utter indifference to the well-being of this community, to the rights and the sensibilities of the people who live here. In any other community, our dam, our canals, our parks, our alleys, the riverbanks would be public assets, not owned by a corporation for profit that leaves this community and does not get reinvested here in any significant or meaningful way. Look at the condition of the canals now. We talk about, and by the way, I have not had a chance to read the memorandum. And I would note that probably 99% of the people in Lawrence have not had a chance to read it. So with all due respect to everyone who's taken part in this process, the majority of people in this community really aren't all that aware about what's going on. I would ask everyone to keep that in mind, that there's no public consensus among the whole of the population. I strongly suspect that if everyone in the city understood what was going on here, this would be another one of those legendary 1 p.m. city council meetings that we haven't had in some time. But I would ask everyone here, including everyone else in this room, how do you think the canals look right now? Has anyone who has owned the canals, has the Essex Company, regardless of who actually owns them, has the Essex Company really maintained the canals? Is this an example of good corporate stewardship? If we have an agreement that perpetuates the maintenance, how is that beneficial? If my car only runs on 3 cylinders, I don't want to maintain it, I want to repair it. Why in God's name would we want to continue what we've been doing for the past 5 decades? I don't want an agreement that maintains the canals. I want an agreement that restores the canals. This community has been denied. The people in this community have been denied the historic, cultural, economic, recreational, and environmental benefit of these assets that other communities have enjoyed. It is a crime. It is an environmental injustice, and I'm not interested in any agreement that perpetuates it. Why are we constantly told in this city that we have to accept whatever crumbs we're given? I bought a home in Lawrence. My children have been educated in Lawrence Public Schools. I'm here by choice. My work every day is about trying to make this community a better place. I serve as a public official because I want to make this a better place. And I urge all of you to not agree to anything that doesn't move Lawrence forward and make this community a better place. Don't maintain canals that are literally crumbling under their own weight. We deserve better. Our children and grandchildren deserve better. We've been going down the wrong path for a long time. Don't continue going down the wrong path. You're the city councilors. You're the elected officials. You're the ones who are, at least to some extent, in the driver's seat here. Do the right thing. Demand more. We deserve it, don't we? Yes. Don't we? Yes. Don't we? I'm asking you. Madam Chair, if you don't mind me addressing him directly. I'd like to know what's going to change. How is this going to be different? Why should we get excited about this? I want to hear the answer to that. I want assurances that we're actually going to get the canals that we deserve. I'd also like to have an assurance that we're going to be able to actually take advantage of clean, safe, renewable hydropower, because there's at least one facility that can still generate hydropower. And the previous owners of the Essex Company fought to deny them their water rights. Will the canal be maintained in a way that allows us to redevelop hydropower? That's the future. It's not competition. It's good for everyone. So I'd like to know what is going to be better. How would we benefit? Central Rivers is doing just fine. They're making money. I don't begrudge them that. But we've been getting the short end of the stick for decades here. That has to change. And I'm not interested in anything that doesn't change the status quo. Thank you very much.
Is anyone else that is present?
Hi, my name is Felipe Collazo, Lawrence resident. I was just watching on Facebook and I thought I'd come through. So I don't really have anything prepared. I'm just going to go off the cuff here. Let's see how it goes. So it's not very often where we have an opportunity to preserve history and move things forward for the future. And I think we're faced with one of those situations right now. And I think that, we also are in a time where we're seeing lots of people start to invest in the city, but not invest in our community. And those are two different things, right? So, as everyone has said so eloquently before me, this is an opportunity where we can choose to go with the status quo and let these people that are investing in our community know that they could get away with whatever they want and just fill their pockets and not support us as community members. Or we can show them that if they want to come and do business here, they have to be willing to be something, support us as a community and push things forward for us as community members. And so with that being said, I just wanted to share that, and hold on, let me tell you what I want to ask of you. I want you to send a letter to the State Historic Preservation Office requesting that she does not sign on to the proposed memorandum of agreement. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Fernanda Lopez, 8B Salem Street. The plant is my representative, so thank you so much. It's just like really moving. I just kind of like wanna pay a little testament of how do I arrive here tonight. I honestly just found out about this last Wednesday at El Taller, where we all find out what's going on in the city. And we had a meeting, and as I'm sitting there, I'm like asking them, can you please explain this to me, to like, as I can explain this to the kids I work with? Because the process is very complicated. It sounds like there's been like decades of neglect and people that own things. And to be brutally honest with all of you, I used to believe that the canals look like that because our city had different priorities, like education and all the things that we need to work on. And I thought, like, no, there's no priority to fix these. But then I realized that not even the city owns the canals. And that got me really mad and really upset. And then when the representative here was saying that they were trying to be more inclusive, I was wondering, why did I just find out about this last Wednesday? And then they are ready to go and give a statement tomorrow, something that sounds that it's like very time sensitive. And then we are just having this conversation right now. So they are like definitely not having us in account in the middle of this conversation as the city is recovering from the traumatic events of the gas explosion. So we are like very achy and traumatized, and we are like living social injustice, environmental injustice, and then here we are asking a company to please take care of their land, to the property, so that they can potentially do a profit, so that they can help us to be the grand city that we deserve to be. This is just like really outraging to me. So I am here to ask you all, my counselors who are here to take care of us and our city, our students, our youth, that SHPO should not sign this memorandum and inform FERC that this procedure must be revisited during the 2023 licensing term. And we made a little something for you all to see. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? I'm going to start taking the people who are on remote. Mr. Bushin. Mr. Bushin. Okay. Mr. Bushin.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I was
Okay.
listening on YouTube. Now I'm on Zoom.
Do you wish to speak?
I don't have anything to add. I just want to support the comments that my friends have already given about the importance of the canals and the potential that they have, the unrealized potential, and the vision that some folks have offered as to what the canals could be, has really kind of woken me up as to what's at stake here.
Counselor, before we start to open the floor for all your questions, I would like to invite Attorney Corrigan, who is in the back, and I believe that he has been involved in part of this, and just to kind of guide us through with all the, you know, the study together.
Thank you, councilors. Brian Corrigan, 122 Chestnut Street, Andover. And I'm here on behalf of the Lawrence Redevelopment Authority. I'm general counsel to the LRA, and we've been involved in this MOA process from the beginning. I'll just give a little bit of background. The reason the LRA is so interested in this particular project is that last year we acquired some property in the Pacific Mills condo complex, and included with that real estate is the right to 33 mill powers, which essentially are rights to draw water from the North Canal to generate hydroelectric power. Those rights have been essentially assigned back to Essex Company CRP for a period of time. It's going to take us some time before we'd actually have the right to start generating hydroelectric power with those rights. One thing I'd like to say, and I mean, this process has been fantastic. The people that have been involved from the community standpoint have been really great. Jessica and her team, John from LCW, and Brad from Groundworks Lawrence, been great. Councilor LaPlante. I mean, obviously, Skip and his crew know that by highlighting this issue now, this canal matter is not going to go away. In fact, I think that they've really highlighted some of the issues that have been neglected for many years. One thing I would say is I'm not particularly concerned about the canals being taken out of the FERC license. And the reason for that is because these canals have been within the jurisdiction of the FERC license for almost 50 years. And look where that's got us, okay? We can't look to Washington to be maintaining or holding CRP's feet to the fire on these canals. I think the city needs to focus on what the city's rights and authority may be to enforce the maintenance obligations for the canals. I mean, if you had a dilapidated building across the common, would we let that go? No, we would hold that property owner responsible for keeping that property up to code. I think the same sort of principles apply to the canals. It's time for the city to step up and take an active role in enforcing code obligations on CRP. And I'm convinced that they're willing to do this. One of the things that's going to come out of this MOA process is a management plan for the canals. And I think rather than having me get into some of the technical aspects of that and what CRP is prepared to do, I think it'd be helpful if Mr. Medford would maybe give us a little bit of, without getting too technical, a little bit of what your company has in mind for a maintenance and improvement plan over the next year, 5 years, and going forward. Perhaps when I'm done, if there are any other questions that I can answer, I'd be happy to do that. But I think it'd be really important for Mr. Medford, as the representative from CRP, to let everybody know what their plan is, to put that in the open on the record, so that everybody knows that, you know, this is what they plan to do. It's not going to be an abandonment of the canals. It's actually going to be an opportunity for the city to take an active role with CRP in revitalizing those canals. So I don't know if you want to have Mr. Medford speak now. I'm happy to come back up.
Stay right there, yes. I
Okay.
think that's a great question, and since you were pointing to him, I think it is great to hear from them, what is the plan? What do they have in plan? And stay right there just in case that,
Okay.
because I'm going to open the floor for other council.
Thank you very much, and Mr. Corrigan as well. Each of these speakers has been tremendous. It's great to hear their thoughts. I've heard some of them before, but they're very eloquent, and many of their comments have a lot of validity. I will start out. As somebody mentioned early, CRP inherited the Lawrence Hydroelectric project and its features, including the canals, from the prior owner, Enel. So we have had only slightly over 2 years to meet with public, assess conditions ourselves, and start to plan repairs and improvements that are necessary. Both the city's 2019 engineering assessment and our own engineer and technical staff's assessment have highlighted important features, some of which have been illustrated by speakers tonight, that need further attention. We recognize that, and our plan is to do better. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Robichaud. He is our National Director of Operations, but he's familiar in Lawrence and has more details pertinent to exactly Mr. Corrigan's request about our recent history, a little over 2 years in Lawrence, and for the subsequent time period regarding the canals. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Robichaud with Central Rivers Power. I'm, as Skip had alluded to, the National Director of Operations for the company. I want to echo sort of what Skip said in some of the comments to a lot of the people we've talked to over the last few months. We inherited a problem from our previous owner. As we've talked about, these are old canals. We talked about it earlier today that, the stone deteriorates, we have to maintain those. We have, again, over the last few years, developed a plan to repair and reinforce those canal walls. We have the Essex Dam structure that we maintain. We also have the canal infrastructure. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of people, it takes a lot of resources. We are a small hydro company. We are not a large hydro company or power company. So we have to keep that in mind as we move forward. We can't take big leaps. We have to take small bites, as they say. We're working with, my operations director for this area, who covers New Hampshire and Massachusetts, spends about 90% of his time down here, neglecting all the other sites because there is such a big infrastructure request here. So we are moving forward to the lower locks area in the North Canal. We're going to start moving ahead and getting that facility or that water retaining structure repaired. We're going to repair the gates there. That'll help bring up that canal level for us. And then we can start developing a repair plan for the canal gates, or the head gates for that North Canal. We also know there's extensive work that needs to be done on the canal walls throughout the North Canal and South Canal infrastructure. So we'll be developing a plan to initiate that work. And again, the first step is to get that lower locks repaired. We've also done or have started the repair process for the South Canal. At the, what's the gate down the bottom, the New Balance?
Wasteway?
Wasteway, thank you. Repaired that. We're working with one of the property owners, CubeSmart, in the area to repair their infrastructure, their wall there, to help that process. So, again, like I said, I want to emphasize we're taking very small bites. It's a big, how to eat an elephant, one bite at a time. We are going through that process to get the redevelopment of these canals, and yeah, I think that's the plan. Any questions?
With all the concern that you had heard tonight, so will you bring something new for your plan that you're going to be presenting just to make sure that to be in place, and you're going to be taking in consideration what we are hearing here tonight.
Yes, we understand that there is a lot of, we have, again, inherited this canal infrastructure from a very passionate community. We understand that that is a big part of this. Every facility we own is incorporated into a city, and we understand that we have to operate within that city. We have to develop plans with the communities, whether it be the city of Berlin in New Hampshire, whether it be a small city out in the state of Washington, or Manchester, New Hampshire, or Lawrence or Lowell. We have to make sure we incorporate our plans with the city to develop that. We understand that it is an eyesore when the canal levels are low. We got to bring those canal levels up to, discourage the growth of vegetation within those and to get those canals in better shape. So again, we are focusing our budgets over the 5-year plan to emphasize that work within the canal infrastructure. And we are working through with the ops manager, like I said, who's down here, working through a plan. We're going to do a community walk, and I think it's 2 weeks, correct? With some of the stakeholders, some of the people sitting in this room, to emphasize what their concerns are to make sure they mirror ours. And that's very much on board with what our expectations are with our 5-year plan and our short-term goals as well.
Thank you, Councilor Payano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, before I ask my questions, I just want to say thank you to 2 groups of people. One, the community presence that has been felt today, seeing so many individuals that are volunteering their time and whose passions are within the city come today, I think is really meaningful and definitely brings me a whole lot of energy. I also want to thank the folks from CRP for being here. I think several of the presenters have spoken about the disrepair, disinvestment that has been going on for decades, right? Some of these folks have been at it for way longer than I have. I think I started tuning into this in 07, so we're talking about just 15 years, right? And folks here have been doing it for 30. So I know that you guys are walking into a certain situation where you're probably saying like, hey, trust us. But what I'll say, it's the difficulty part of it is, even though you guys are new, at the same time, you're in the same space, you have the same powers, you're doing the same thing as these other people, right? So for us, at least for myself, I think that there's a difficulty in, being like, yes, things are going to be different. However, coming in, I try to, when I'm sitting at this table, do my best to take my bias out. I have a few questions so I can try to understand sort of like the reason behind this proposal. I am pressing the button. So the reason behind the proposal. So I've gone through here, through the documents that were given to us, and I have a first sense of what it's gonna be, but I don't yet understand why you're choosing to do this. Like, what is the benefit that you guys are getting from this? Like, there has to be a reason why you're choosing to go this route.
You want to answer that, or you want me?
No, I'll try and take a stab at it. The MOA process and Canals removal from the project boundary amendment, we were directed to evaluate that by the FERC in 2019. Their findings of their assessment and inspection came out in August 2019. And they directed us to make an assessment of whether the canals remained necessary for project operation. Under the 18 CFR citation provided in my document to you is FERC's regulation for whether they can include features within a project's boundary, okay? So we're operating from that 2019 directive. Our conclusion after legal review and with our experts in-house who have a lot of familiarity with FERC regulation and the CFR was that these canals no longer were necessary for operation of the Lawrence Hydroelectric project. As you're probably aware, several hydropower facilities on the north and south canals have ceased operation within the last decades. Navigation through the locks no longer exists. And we did not have any recreation or cultural or public safety features down the canals. So, that was our conclusion. FERC, as part of their processing of the amendment application, which they requested us to do if that was our conclusion, we filed in August of 2020. Our filing was in August of 2020. The FERC's directive to us was in August of 2019. Per FERC's directive, we filed the amendment application after reaching that conclusion. Therefore, we're following directive of the FERC here after their inspection and assessment in 2019 and years prior. There is some recognition by us that canal operation, maintenance, is not our strength. It's not our forte. Much like we would never attempt to replicate the fantastic job that the Lawrence History Center does in its record keeping and its repository and its mission. They do a fantastic job. We can't replicate that. Similarly, we try to produce electricity well at our primary plant on Broadway. Canals operation and the historic resources, the community involvement that goes in there, the feedback, the dialogue, the maintenance and planning and opportunities and potentials that could be there over decades are not our strengths. So we in recognizing our strengths, we also see that canals operation are not where our primary focus probably should be, and others could do it better.
Okay, I think I'm starting to understand. So what I will say, if there are organizations, like the History Center, you might not be able to do what they do. You can always support those type of organizations. So I see that essentially what you're trying to do here, it sounds like, is it wouldn't be you wouldn't be CRP that would be managing the canals. It'd be another entity. Or would it be CRP?
The field is wide open right now. Our MOA in this process, this amendment process, which, as I emphasized before, FERC is going to process according to the regulation, and part of that is opening up to public comment, is to, we would still remain owners. Essex Company would remain owners. If there's another party who could manage, operate, own the canals better, that was part of the detailed discussion that we've had over the past 3 months with stakeholders, including City of Lawrence representatives, who have been part of our discussion since January 11th. So, 2022.
Oh, 2022, okay.
Yes. We've held them bi-weekly every Tuesday afternoon. Are there other organizations that could manage it better? Possibly, and we've talked. Mr. Corrigan referenced the details, and I don't want to go into too many details, but alternate party involvement in canals management and possibly ownership has been broached. And as Mr. Corrigan eloquently said, the prior decades of FERC supervision here haven't sounded too successful from the comments we've heard. The MOA process that we're endeavoring to go down and we'll report to the FERC on provides details and a novel approach and specificity that hasn't been addressed before. So we really think that the the administration of the canals from a local basis and not Washington, as Attorney Corrigan mentioned, could have a very beneficial effect here. Obviously, the last 50 years, have not produced the effect that we, and I think most every person we've heard from tonight would agree is desirable.
Thank you, Mr. Medford. So I just want to make sure that I have the right MOA. So there is an MOA document with us. Is that the MOA that you are speaking of?
Yes. There's only one MOA, Memorandum of Agreement. It's a draft, which we've been developing with stakeholders and intend to file tomorrow.
Okay, perfect.
On FERC schedule.
So what I will say is I don't know what the previous MOA was with, or whatever agreement there was before with Enel or the former owners of the canals. So I can't state the differences. Now, one of the things that you talked about was that there's a process here in place to essentially deal with disagreements or to ensure that the canals are being taken care of. And you sort of sounds like that you're highlighting that. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I can briefly. The draft MOA, and keep in mind that despite being aware in several instances in the consultation over the last 3 months, the City of Lawrence is one of the invited organizations that hasn't provided us written comments for our incorporation in the draft MOA. And that's fine. Our submittal can proceed. We'd love to have your written comments, if at all possible. Our filing tomorrow can incorporate them in time, but the city is welcome to submit comments at any time to the FERC. Can you remind me your question? Again,
Yeah,
please?
so I think, one of the things that, so you're coming in and you're essentially saying like, hey, like we're changing things, right? But don't be worried about that we're changing things because it didn't work before. We're presenting something new and it's gonna work well with this new thing, right? So I'm trying to figure out what about this new thing is gonna make me sort of confident that it's gonna work better, right, than it did before. Besides the fact that it sounds like, hey, as a leader in this community, I am glad that you guys are coming here. But it is hard presenting yourself in front of an open group, and so I'm glad that you guys are doing that because what that tells me is that you guys want to be partners in this community, or I hope that that's what it means, right? So if you can just talk to me just briefly, what about this MOA well, I mean, I think it sounds like, as you're speaking, it sounds like you're excited about, that you think that will make this different than what we were doing before.
I am excited about what I'm about to say. The MOA, despite its origination in a federal process, which is a heck of a bureaucracy, outlines the steps, schedules, and recourse for the stakeholders, primarily the FERC, SHPO, and the Essex Company, but concurring parties' opportunity to be Lawrence Historical Commission, the City of Lawrence, and Groundwork Lawrence, among others, if they so choose or desire, to implement a plan that can be administered locally. As Mr. Corrigan mentioned, the prior decades have been administered in Washington, D.C. So, this MOA provides details, and I know somebody referenced up here tonight, referenced the HPMP. That stands for a Historic Properties Management Plan. So, it's a subsequent documentation which will more fully describe the project and non-project historic features, canals, gatehouses, locks, wasteways, and other associated features that we all desire to protect, and how they will be protected, when they will be protected, what standards shall be met, and things like that, and schedules, and opportunities in a legal agreement for recourse if somebody isn't meeting their goals. The MOA lays that out. Now, naturally, it's a document that presently has been worked on by 20 parties. We haven't finalized it yet. We're submitting it to FERC in draft form. The details are important, but they aren't final yet, and none of the parties absolutely concurs with every other party at this time. But, we've never seen before, at least in my tenure, and I've been involved with the Lawrence project for some time, a discussion of a target elevation for the canal. Where should that canal level be? Should it be seasonal or not? What flows should be provided? Photographic documentation of the canal and other historic features according to historic standards. Let's get that in place. Some people have mentioned preservation funds. That was clear from the SHPO's letter. That opportunity is mentioned in the MOA. And the other details of the HPMP that specify how, who, what qualifications, and when to conduct historic preservation of what features are specified in further detail.
Okay, so I think I understand, Speed. So it sounds like the MOA is basically a document that states that we're going to come together and make a plan.
I think that's fair.
Okay. So I think that's important to note, because I think that, initially when I went to look at the document, I thought that the document would be the plan, but it's fine. So it sounds like it's baby steps, right? So who would be in charge of organizing and putting this plan together? Or bringing, because you mentioned several parties, like who's the head organizer that's bringing all these different voices together to make sure that the plan is something that, there's a compromise across the room?
Essex Company was designated the agent by the FERC in 2021 to accomplish consultation. We've attempted that, and that's what our submittal tomorrow will be about. At this point, it's gonna kick into the FERC's hands, shall we say. They're the federal administrator of this hydropower project, and they're gonna have to follow their rules, regulations, and schedules for the processing of this amendment.
I just have two final questions for you. And specifically in the MOA, there's a section that talks about dispute resolution and also failure to complete a stipulation. So one of the issues that I'm having with that particular section says that failure to complete the stipulation of this MOA within 3 years from the date of its execution shall constitute a violation of the terms of this MOA by Essex. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that?
I'll attempt to. I think it originated as a comment from one of our stakeholders in our last 3 months consultation, I believe. Is that?
So it could be. So I think, the reason I'm bringing it up is that, initially when, I will say that, we didn't have our city attorney have a discussion with us about this, but going through the document, the first thing that stood out was this section. Initially, I thought, has anything to do with like construction or anything like that? And it sounds like it doesn't. This is more about the different items that are going to be put in place of this plan. And my fear is that now we are essentially, this could take, potentially it could take up to 3 years to move a piece of that plan forward. And by that time, momentum could be lost.
Okay, so the specific comment you mentioned.
Would you like me to read it again?
No, thank you. I think I got the gist of it, and I think it came from a comment from a stakeholder that we elected not to include in the draft package to the FERC. It's a good thought, and it's worthy of dialogue down the road. The timetable here of MOA execution, I think if at the beginning of the draft MOA, if you have that document in front of you or available, you know, the conditions, for example, specify that within 6 months of MOA execution, certain steps will occur. And in another item, it states, within 6 months of MOA execution, an HPMP will be developed and submitted. Those are really good, kind of hold our feet to the fire schedules. The 3 years is, you know, a generous fail-safe if something doesn't proceed in that time frame.
I hear you on that, and I think it's just my own personal thoughts on it, right? If it was a construction project, I could be like, all right, yeah, maybe that could take about 3 years. But what we're talking about is the creation of some of these plans. Taking 3 years to do it just sounds just really out of norm. But regardless of that, just to move on, my next question is, what happens if, I mean, there's nothing here that states, if pieces of this take longer than 3 years, what happens then? Like, what is the, what are the consequences that are put in place, or if any, to make sure that the parties that are signing on to this actually move forward?
I think there was language in there addressing that concern. To be honest, it doesn't sound like one of the primary concerns that we and our stakeholders focused on heavily in the last 3 months. So I can't be certain that it's in there. It's a valid question, and it would certainly be something that I would recommend that the City of Lawrence include in comments to the FERC at this point. And naturally, this is a draft developed with stakeholders. It has not proceeded to legal review on CRP's part, on FERC's part, and certainly not on SHPO's part. So all that remains to be done. If there were certain items like that that an attorney would want included, that will likely occur at a subsequent date.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Medford, for answering my question. Madam Chair, I do have a question for someone from the mayor's office. I'd like to hear what their take is on this item.
Okay, sir, Councilor Payano, the gentleman who.
Go ahead, Madam Chair.
Hi, John Harden, resident of Congress Street in Lawrence and real estate director for Lawrence Community Works. I've been involved in the creation and drafting of the MOA as one of the concerned parties, since the beginning. And, with all due respect, I think there's some misleading information that is being presented here. FERC does not manage CRP's activities from Washington. There is a license agreement in place that was put in when the hydro project at the dam was created. And in fact, in that license, it stipulates that CRP, or that Essex Company, is to maintain the dam and the canals, which they have not done. Another point is that the termination or a 3-year time period for this was actually discussed, quite extensively in this, and it was a point of major concern. The way it is ultimately drafted, which may be FERC language that was, put in here, we're not sure because we don't know what FERC, if FERC has a template for this or not. But it basically says that if anything, if the stipulations agreed to in the MOA are not met within 3 years, it becomes null and void. It's done. And at that point, FERC steps in and makes an MOA. They may consult with other parties to do so. They may not. A following point is termination of the contract, where in its final draft form, and again, this might be FERC language, if any party to the MOA decides that any stipulation in the MOA is not possible or cannot be achieved, they have the right to terminate the MOA. They're supposed to, reach out to the other parties to try and negotiate an amendment to it, but if that's not completed within 30 days, then the MOA can be terminated. I think every party that was party to the discussions in the MOA objected to both of those provisions for very obvious reasons that, Councilor Payano, you have brought up. CRP may be a relatively small company, but they are majority owned by an investment firm out of Maryland, a private equity fund that owns substantial facilities all across the United States. And while this process could result in something that provides real benefit to the canals and the city of Lawrence, unfortunately, recent history gives none of us any faith that that may happen. I think, speaking personally, to me, it's particularly telling that one of the first actions CRP would take, as the new owners of this, is, not to create a restoration plan for the canals or anything like that, but to, but to want to amend their license when it becomes up for renewal. My own feeling is that they're in violation of not only their FERC license, but the Essex Company as an entity is in violation of the original charter that they were granted by the state. What we have been completely unable to determine is whether removing them from FERC jurisdiction provides any better opportunity for the community to force improvements to be made. FERC has told us that they will not be involved at all in the canal maintenance or preservation if it's removed from the project area. The State Historic Preservation Officer, I believe we're meeting with her next week, perhaps the week after. It's unclear whether they have the authority to force these kinds of improvements. And despite all of the language about historic properties management, maintenance and repairs, creating a maintenance and repair fund, there is nothing about restoration, nothing in there. And so we're in a situation where, yes, they could potentially be preserved in the condition they are now, which is horrible. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councilor Payano.
Madam Chair, councilors, good evening.
Thank you, Director Spanner. So I'm just interested in understanding where the administration is on this, what your thoughts are on this particular project to start off.
Well, first of all, like any business, this boils down to money. In terms of maintenance of the canal. In the total disrepair, I think you had your assessment being made, as well as other assessments. Here I have one from Woodard and Curran. And the Peña administration is not in favor to separate to exclude the canals. It's not, no. And this is the reason, because of the costs of maintaining the canal. The assessments, right now the city cannot assume that responsibility. That would be another, as you know, the mayor administration did not and is not in favor of increasing taxes. This would be additional cost to the city. And like any other business, when you have, you do your studies, you make your assessment, you make projections. And in this case, we are not ready to assume that responsibility.
Thank you, Director Spanner. I think it'd be important, if that's the stance of the administration, that the signatories of this agreement, that our state representatives, our state senator, and our congresswoman are aware of the mayor's stance on this project as well. I think that'd be very important that they're hearing from the mayor. My thoughts on it is that not being, I will say that if we were talking about education, maybe I'd be more versatile than hydroelectric power and the canal, but from the various documents that I've been reading, my main question was, what are the benefits coming from the change? When reading the document, I will say that it is not necessarily clear from the document that the MOA, that these changes will bring good benefits towards the city. So if that's the case, then why change? I'm very worried about that. Potentially, while I think it might be coming from a good place, there's nothing within it that makes me with confidence believe that would be able to reach an agreement that would be enforceable. And from what I'm hearing from the other stakeholders is that potentially there could be a bad case scenario could be that 2 years down the road, both parties or all parties kind of walk away and there's nothing there on the table. And that's worrying to me. I think that my thoughts hope that we are able to partner with CRP, maybe not on this, but on other items that will help our community and help our city. And what I would also state to CRP is I think that there's some type of building of trust that needs to occur. I like the fact that you guys are taking on the rebuilding or the improving of the canal, and there was a reference to the 2019 report. You're making your own report. That's fine. Hopefully it just doesn't take way too long for some of this to occur. And what I would suggest to all of you is that process be as transparent as possible. I understand that it's baby steps, but if the timeline can be shared with members of the public, I think that would benefit all of us. Even though, I'm sure that some of us will be like, oh, that's taking too long. At least it's a starting step in the right direction where we're seeing what it is that you guys are trying to do. I will leave my my comments there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilor De La Cruz.
Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I believe this sounds like a very complicated discussion, but I can believe that we are planning. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Madam? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. What I'm trying to say is that I can believe we're going to destroy such a beautiful nature that we have in that area. That open space brings a lot of peace. When I walk around there, I feel like, we are breathing a better air. Then if we close that location, we will be making the city to lose more crowded. Can we use the hydroelectric to do renewable energy? can we use that area to be like a malecon or river walk that people can walk and enjoy the area? We already have different institutions like Lawrence Community Works, Groundwork Lawrence, and I'm sure 100%. And I'm sure 100% that if we sit together on the table to discuss the benefit of having that space open, I'm sure that, like always, Lawrence will come out with beautiful ideas in how to make a difference. Closing that area will be to make the city more crowded. We hope that we can continue the discussion, work together as a community, and include other peoples as we need it, that we can keep that space to make it better, to look like a beautiful location that we can continue to enjoy. I hope we're not planning to build any houses in there. And we continue to plant trees. If you go around there, there is a lot of trees that has been planted by Groundwork Lawrence. Then why not to make a plan to make that area more beautiful and to work on the needs? I understand those bricks needed to be changed. That water needed to be more cleaner. But at the same time, we have to think about renewable energy that we can continue use to benefit the community. Then thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the opportunity. But I don't see that place being built in houses, and I hope it never happens.
Thank you, Councilor De La Cruz. Councilor Infante.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing that I would like to point out as I was hearing CRP respond to one of my colleagues is that CRP was emphasizing that they did this analysis or the study by the requirement of the FERC. One important factor of that, of why the FRC even required them to do this, is because our local stakeholders filed a complaint on June 7, 2017. And to me, that looks like after filing this complaint, after doing the analysis, how I am analyzing it is that now the company is trying to not be held accountable, which is what our local stakeholders were trying to initiate at first. With that being said, and after hearing Director Spanner speak about the administration's point of view on this, I would like to know, during your assessments or findings, did it produce a dollar figure for the yearly cost of maintenance of the canals? Through you, Madam Chair. Sure.
Not, something that we can't just all of a sudden just throw a bunch of money in it. Like I said, we have to very much think ahead, look at it from a 5-year perspective and say, okay, this is what we're going to budget. This is how we're going to manage these projects moving forward. Already for this year, we've accelerated our budget by a significant amount to manage the Lower Locks project and some vegetation removal and to be more proactive in light of the optics on this, and again, with a community spirit. So that's what we're trying to do, so.
But is there a dollar figure for the yearly cost of the maintenance of the canals?
I would say I don't think I could put a solid figure on it. This year, we're probably spending upwards of $500,000 to $600,000 on the canals.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I just would like to end. I don't think we would be here right now if it wasn't for our local stakeholders filing their complaint. And as I got a feeling that our community, there's distrust between our community and the owners of the canal. And after reviewing the packets that were given to us, especially knowing that there was a complaint filed and it wasn't even acknowledged tonight, I also share those concerns and distrust.
Thank you. Councilor Del Rosario.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. I've been in Lawrence for 30 years, and I've seen all this big investment coming in to try to get out of us what we have. But it's so hard for them to invest to restore what we have. It's too expensive to invest the money in our city. But it's not expensive to invest little money to get everything out of it. So I have a question. In this 2 years after your assessment and everything you have done, what have you improved in our canal? I haven't seen anything, but I would like to know, because maybe you have done something in our canal in the past 2 years, or when you actually inherit this problem child, right? What have you done in these 2 years to try to improve at least the looks of the canal? What has been done in this little 2 years that you have had?
Thank you for your question. It's a good one, and your comments, Councilor, are right on target. Thank you. I'm going from memory. On the South Canal, we are working right now and have enacted this week a Canal Draw for the benefit of the City of Lawrence at its Merrimack paper site, working with Groundwork Lawrence and the TEC engineers. It's a big endeavor. It requires planning, coordination, scheduling, you name it. That's occurring this week. We're also working with a landowner down on the South Canal at 51 South Canal Street to address leakage concerns that are troublesome to them. We've been doing that in 21, and we're continuing that now. We hope to reach a good resolution in partnership with them. Moving further down the South Canal, we repaired the wasteway there that was dislodged in storms and impacting the Greater Lawrence Sanitary District's sewer interceptor near the end of the South Canal, where it joined the Merrimack River. So those are 3 big projects just on the South Canal. Over on the North Canal, we've assessed the intake gates, which are at the North Canal Gatehouse, and outlined a plan and schedule for getting them back to functioning order, which we inherited in a state of disrepair. Our engineers and our technical staff have done canal inspections, and we are planning March 30th, for many of our stakeholders in the audience, a walkover canal opportunity with them. That was developed during the stakeholders meeting of the past 3 months. Moving down, we've taken a hard look at 1 Mill Street, the wall, the North Canal wall, right there. So, we realized that the 2019 engineering report, sponsored by the city, identified that area, among quite a few, as needing attention. We're focusing on that area and trying to get together plans for making the repair there. In 2020, at the start of the pandemic, we had a request from a stakeholder who was working with a restaurant on the North Canal down near Union Street. And we worked with them to allow their patrons to still use the restaurant but eat outdoors. That hadn't occurred forever, to allow people to publicly occupy the canal-adjacent land right next to the canal, but for benefit of the local restaurant, which was impacted by COVID, as we all were. It wasn't a repair, but it was an effort on our part that involved legal and public safety and operations to assess that, can we do this? Can we do this? And we could, so we did. Moving further down the North Canal, I pointed out to John, and his assessment team was learning of it already, that the Lower Locks area, are you familiar, was in dire need of repair. The Lower Locks area, right now for us, and its water retaining capability, is step 1 in restoring the water level of the North Canal. We're making it priority number 1, and John's referenced it tonight. We need to repair gates. John and his team have already done sill repair in August of 2021 to enable that work to proceed in a stepwise fashion. So we worked on lower locks in 21. We're going to work on lower locks in 22. Gate repair. I've spoken with the Conservation Commission about what's necessary to remove trees down at the lower lock structure, which after 2 decades of growth are just preventive for further maintenance and inspection. That's one of my next steps with the Conservation Commission, is getting approval to remove trees so that John's team can further inspect and decide next steps with engineering for what's necessary at lower locks. There's a penstock there, there's a bridge there. You know, I'm sure this is nothing new, but those are major structures. Once we can repair the lower locks' water retention capability, then we hope to move on canal elevation improvements, which are desired by all and have been mentioned tonight, for canal wall stability, for canal vegetation control, and for appearance and aesthetics. You know, we've heard from many people who want that canal level up. We're taking the engineering steps and the repair steps necessary to achieve that. So those are some activities in 2020, 2021, and a small portion of 22 that we've taken and plan to take. They aren't visible. You know, I don't know if you knew the South Canal was drawn today. It was drawn to, and by request of Groundwork Lawrence and the City of Lawrence, to allow engineers into the penstocks, the water tubes of Merrimack paper. That facilitates whatever plans the City of Lawrence has out there. We haven't been as timely as we could have, and we're trying to remedy that. We got it done today for Merrimack paper redevelopment.
Okay. Before you asked us that, before you bought it or before you got it, you guys did a walkthrough, and how much money do you have to spend to restore it? And if you know it was going to be so expensive, because it sounds like a sacrifice for you to do now, why do you got into this type of business? I mean, if I'm going to buy a car and it doesn't have any tires, and I feel that I'm going to spend $3 million in 4 tires, and I only have $1.5 million, and after I buy those tires, I'm not going to make my $1.5 million back. Why would I get into that business? So before you ask us, well, you guys got that 2 years ago, I'm assuming that you guys did a walk around and says, well, we're going to spend this much money. And if it was so much money, or if it's so expensive, so much work, extremely sacrifice like you guys are doing, why do you guys decided, let's go into this? What is behind that? I mean, it's the question.
It's a good question. I was not part of the assessment team at Central Rivers Power that made that decision or that analysis. I can't answer it, but CRP wants to be receptive to you. You know, that would be a question that I would recommend you can send John or myself, and we could try to answer it. I'm not the person, and I really don't have any knowledge of that process when it occurred.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No more questions.
Councilor LaPlante, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So I just have a few questions and then maybe make a motion. You answered Councilor from District E's questions regarding funding, and I'm just curious. So we talked about how much money we've spent maybe to date or last year. How much money are you expecting to be spending to continue the improvements, some would call it restoration, of the canals, at least this year, next year, and perhaps over the 5 years?
I have to defer to my colleague. Thank you. I don't know.
Okay. Mr. Robichaud?
Yeah, a great question. I would say, you know, at this point, we're spending, again, like I said, $500,000 to $600,000 this year to upgrade those facilities, the walls. Looking forward, again, we're still doing the assessment of that. I would say that spending would be in kind over the next 5 years to bring these canal infrastructures back up. And that's, you know, not taking into account the money we have to invest into our facility that generates the power. So again, it's a significant expense. I answered or would have loved to have been there during the assessment of when we purchased these, but I wasn't. But again, that's sort of where our 5-year plan is.
So I just don't have an answer, and so you weren't able to give really one for next year and the year after, but you are committing to monies, but you just don't know how much.
At this time, we're still doing evaluation of it. I would say that the spending will be very similar or in kind to this year.
All right. Okay. Many of the speakers this evening discussed why we needed to have this MOA as the first thing out of the box, as opposed to leaving the canals in part of the footprint and just dealing with the new license with the canals there. And I think the reason is because you're telling me that, or telling us that it's not really part of the plan to have hydropower being used at the canals. According to Mr. Medford, it's not our strength, I think was the words that he used. It's not our strength to be doing it. It's not what, we're into the dam building, we're into hydroelectric, but going down canals and then moving turbines, that's not us. And I hope I'm not misunderstanding that. That's the way that I took it. So the question is with Mr. Corrigan saying that there's at least one, and there may be a couple of different mills or entities along, I think, definitely on the north side. I'm not sure about the south side. Well, probably Merrimack Paper will probably be the one on the south side. So there are a couple of potential usages, right? Why would you want to not include potentially viable mills using mill power and taking them out of the footprint? Because if they ever want to get back in, how are they going to be able to come back in a FERC process that's probably, the license is going to last, what, 50 years, 40 years, whatever? It's a pretty long time, longer than I'm probably going to be alive. So the question is, so there's a lot of questions in there, but let's just start off with this. Why would you take it out? Why would you take it out? Why wouldn't you the canals out of it? Why not leave it into the regular license?
That's a great question. I guess you want to take that one with the...
Yeah, I can try.
Can you frame it again really quick, Mark, please? I'm sorry.
It's Councilor President.
I'm sorry.
And the question is, through you, Madam Chair, the question is why would you take the footprint out of the license, the canal out of the license?
As I believe I may have mentioned before, we are following a request and a directive by the FERC here, which was to evaluate whether we believe the canals were necessary for present project operation. Our conclusion was not, after reviewing applicable law. You know, FERC's path and directive to us after that was clear. If we believed that there was any viable hydropower production on the North or South Canal in the near future, I think our assessment would have concluded differently. We've tried to engage the Lawrence Planning Department in this in dialogue on this matter because of mill power's prevalence in Lawrence and their history of transferability, and because of the City of Lawrence's acquisition of Merrimack Paper and the Lawrence Redevelopment Authority's acquisition of Pacific Mills. You know, we have knowledge of the turbines and their hydropower production potential there, but we also have many years of operating across numerous states, waterways, under FERC supervision. And our conclusion was, to be frank, that hydropower doesn't seem feasible through either the North or South Canal at this time. There are a number of There are a number of legal precedents and other information that we'd be happy to supply to you and or any other stakeholder in dialogue in the near future. I think that would be productive, and we'd be happy to do it.
But tomorrow, you're sending an MOA to FERC. The final, the draft is you're having the final, and hopefully, and you're looking to get the signatories onto the MOA, and that deadline is tomorrow. So you're sending that information out. If I'm misreading this, please correct me. But the deadline is tomorrow on the MOA, and you're getting that information over to FERC, and hopefully getting potential signatures from at least to SHPO and obviously yourself and FERC, right? You're giving me this look like I'm not speaking correctly. Am I misunderstanding what tomorrow is about? If I am, please correct me.
I'm trying to understand the entirety of what you're presenting.
Okay. So the point here, very simply, is you are already moving quickly down the path of an MOA, where at this point it's moving very quickly. There's going to be an opportunity for us to comment, of course, at the FERC level, right? That will be there, but that's apparently moving. There is no opportunity now, I don't think, for you to reconsider the comments that we've had here today, asking about the necessity of this MOA, rather than having this MOA, why not incorporating this into the license? And that ship, I think, has sailed. You've made the decision. You want to get this thing you want to get the canals out of the footprint of the license. That ship has sailed. Am I understanding this correctly? If not, please correct me.
I think you're mistaken, perhaps.
Okay. And correct me where I'm wrong, please.
Our desire there, as I mentioned, I believe to your counselor colleague, was to, as a secondary, because canals management in this instance is not our forte, and the cultural and recreation and other potential benefits that they provide and opportunities are not our forte. The primary schedule and mandate that we are operating under is from the FERC. I myself filed the extension of time with the FERC in the fall, requesting an additional 3 months from their first schedule to allow us to file on March 22nd. The original filing date of this process was in December. We've already filed for an extension, which FERC granted, thankfully. Since that extension was granted, we've endeavored in all possible ways to include as many stakeholders, including the City of Lawrence, as possible. So we're operating under FERC directive and schedule. A secondary desire, but it's not the primary thing that is causing us to file for tomorrow's deadline, is our recognition of our strengths and weaknesses. Yes.
We're making this way too convoluted. Essex Company / CRP does not want to have the canals in the footprint, and doing whatever we can, you're doing whatever you can to try to get stakeholders involved to sign off and say, yeah, we're okay with that. And you're hearing some hesitancy, I think, at least this evening, and from what I've heard during the conference calls. Okay, so the question is I think you've answered the question as maybe I'm not satisfied with the answer. Maybe that's where it stands. And the fact of the matter is that you've essentially spoken. You want this out. And the comments that others have made with respect to, well, it hasn't worked for X number of years, and maybe this is the new pathway. But there's also the question of 2 points. Again, to repeat, there's others who say they could use it. You say no, you've done some evaluations, you don't think so. Others, Mr. Corrigan, I was pointing, who was here, and others as well, have said there may be an opportunity. So you're taking that, you're going to take that right out of the pathway. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, why is it so important? Why is it so critical that we get this thing out now, as opposed to letting in the license as part of the normal process? Why?
I think your question, Councilor President LaPlante, is better addressed to the FERC. This process, MOA, and canals removal from the boundary potential, including directive from the FERC, started in FERC's conclusion of August 2019, when the Lawrence project was still owned by Enel. So we inherited a little bit of that too, this process. Yeah, it's easier for us, and I think to have this issue, if possible, decided and planned for and scheduled with all its details, and there are many details in the HPMP that I referenced, decided ahead of the FERC relicensing process beginning in 2023. But as we've learned, we've been receptive to hearing from as many stakeholders as desire to participate. We've been engaging, and if the strong desire of others is that this is too important an issue to decide by March 22nd, 2022, we're open to that reality too. We have a deadline to meet that was set by others, FERC, but we've been receptive and recognize, thankfully from your comments, and you aren't the first to mention relationship and trust. Many of the organizations that you've heard from tonight have said those same things to us in the past 3 months in stakeholder calls. That's what John and I have to work on in the future, is relationship and trust by what we can do and what we are doing. So, our path is clear. The MOA has been prescribed on a schedule. We're trying to meet that. Its filing deadline was scheduled for tomorrow. That's what we're doing. I was.
Were you with Enel? Can you give me kind of an idea of how, you've seen both sides. You've seen Enel in operation. You've seen CRP for a couple of years. You've been an important point person on both. Give me kind of an analysis as to what separates CRP from Enel.
Okay. And let me clarify, I wasn't a point person for Enel. But you're right, I have some awareness, yes. What separates CRP is we're more local, we aren't international, and we're more nimble and more responsive. The adjectives I've used are synonyms, but we can operate quicker, more responsively, and in a better manner with less bureaucracy than Enel, a multinational firm, could.
I appreciate that. And I think my last question, because we do need to move on, it's getting late for everybody, I think, the HPMP, which is probably, as I'm looking at this, I'm not so thrilled about taking the thing out of the footprint, to be honest with you, through you, Madam Chair. I'm just that somebody said it so correctly earlier, that taking that out is one of the first things within the year or so. It automatically just smacks. That's not a good faith issue. When you know the canals are the issue, but you're trying to come to the end around on the HPMP. In your view of that, is that where $500,000 or $600,000 is going to be dedicated from Enel to go toward that? Where is the money coming from to fund that?
The HPMP?
Correct.
That would be the responsibility of the licensee of the Lawrence project, Essex Company.
And so the question that we asked before, so that's the funding mechanism, the roughly the same amount of money that has been spent on this year. I think the number of $500,000 or $600,000 was thrown out there. That's the kind of potential allocation that we would see from the Essex Company to HPMP? Or is it something different?
I think it's a little different, if I may.
Please.
The HPMP as a document or a plan can be developed by a historic expert. Actually, it must be. It specified the qualifications of the expert in the document. I think it's in the MOA. That HPMP is a one-time document, which I'm sure could be revised over the years, but it would not be part of what John referenced, which would be maintenance, repair, restoration of canal historic features. Physical repairs, upkeep, things like that.
So there's $500,000, $600,000 for maintenance, repairs, and then there's the historic element in addition to. Is that a more accurate description?
I think that's more accurate.
And I lied. I have one more question. In Lowell, do you have the same issues going on in Lowell right now? Are you a player, so to speak, in Lowell as far as the mills and the water power and the canals and all that? Is there similarity going on in Lowell with CRP?
Boot Hydropower is the hydropower licensee in Lowell, the last remaining. It's also a subsidiary of Central Rivers Power, and although it is almost through its relicensing process, its license expires in 2023. Many of the same topics and concerns have been addressed up there.
So are you further along in Lowell than you are in Lawrence at this point?
The Lowell project hydropower relicense is almost concluded up there in Lowell for that hydropower project in the FERC arena. In Lawrence, here, for the Lawrence hydropower project, we won't begin relicensing until 2023.
Did you also look to take the canals out in Lowell or not? Was there similarities there or not? Lowell?
There are some similarities. In our license application, which was very close to the beginning of that 5-year relicense process, the canals were proposed to not be included in the subsequent license, yes.
So they're not in the current license. Just say they're not in Lowell. The canals are not part of this current license or the subsequent license.
The current license expires in 2023.
Yeah.
The canals are in presently.
Yeah.
In the subsequent license, they are not proposed to be.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes.
I also want to acknowledge, thank you, Mr. Mitford. I also want to acknowledge a school committee member who is also part of Groundworks, Lawrence, Jonathan Guzman for District F. I know he's another elected official. I want to thank him and Groundwork Lawrence as well for a lot of the work that they've provided. They did not speak this evening for whatever, probably good reasons, but we do appreciate all the hard work that they put into it. Madam Chair, if there's no other comments from any of our colleagues, let me know when I can make a motion.
Go ahead.
At this point, I'm looking to, so a couple of steps. I'm looking to move this up to the full council to motion to file. I'm putting this aside. What I'm looking to do almost immediately at the next full city council meeting is to prepare a draft letter comment from us. A letter from us that we'll have to work on to make sure we're on the same page. But I'll put a draft letter on the council agenda. That'll be probably sent down to the ordinance committee for their review and then sent up. And the idea behind this letter is that because of the timing, is this letter is going to be sent to FERC. But I'm sure we will continue to get information and feedback from the people we represent as we put that letter together. So I'd like to make a motion that we send this document up to the full council with a recommendation to place on file.
Second.
Motion has been made, properly second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Roll call.
Councilor Stephanie Infante,
Yes.
Councilor Selena Reyes, Councilor Gregorio del Rosario,
Yes.
Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilor Maria de la Cruz,
Yes.
Councilor Ana Levy,
Yes.
Councilor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
Councilor President Mark LaPlante, sorry,
Yes.
and Chair Estela Reyes.
Yes.
Motion passed, thank you.
So the next motion?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Before we adjourn.
Something else? All right, I'll wait for
There's only one item that I believe, thank you all for being here. Your
Madam
comments
Chair,
is going to be well taken.
if it's the education,
Oh, is, the item. And the agenda. We do, Councilor Rodriguez, we don't have anyone from the administration. You wish to table this item until we have some respond?
I would like to, the fact that
I
we.
can't hear you.
Can you hear? You let me know when you hear me. I'm speaking.
Progress. Councilor Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this item. I would like to, if the council are okay with it, send this over to the full council as a committee report so we can have a better opportunity and chance to discuss the full council level, since this committee is not meeting very often.
Second.
Is, you make that as a proper motion?
Yes.
Discussion.
Discussion, Councilor LaPlante.
Through you, Madam Chair, would it be more beneficial to kick this item around at the committee level and at the full council level? Because the question here is, the city departments.
Are not answering incoming calls for residents.
I mean, that's a question for the administration. Has the counselor from District D reached out to the administration and asked the question to find out if they're improving or if there's still a problem? Maybe the problem's gone away, I'm not sure.
That's exactly what he's saying, that since it's not one from the administration, he want to send it to the full council and ask them to be present just to kind of give it some update. I know that he's been having some conversation about that because I was involved in that, but at least they can bring an update and we can move forward with that.
That's exactly what I'm looking for. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. So the
Thank you.
The motion has been made, properly second. All those in favor? Aye. Roll call.
Roll call for document, which document was that one?
29321.
Councilor Gregory Del Rosario,
Yes.
Councilor Selena Reyes,
Yes.
Councilor Stephanie Infante,
Yes.
Councilor Ana Levy,
Yes.
Councilor Maria de la Cruz,
Yes.
Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilor Pavel Payano, Councilor President Mark LaPlante,
No.
Chair Stella Reyes.
Yes.
Now, can I make a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Two second. One. Has been made. All those in favor? Roll call.
Wait.
Councilor Rosario,
Yes.
Councilor Selena Reyes, Councilor Maria de la Cruz,
Yes.
Councilor Stephanie Infante,
Yes.
Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilor Ana Levy,
Yes.
Councilor President Mark LaPlante,
Yes.
and Chair Stella Reyes.
Of course, yes. Thank you. Thank you all.